Dear students, let's start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 28th April 2017. The first article, Learning to Run Twice as Fast. This article is written in the context of recent FRBM Review Committee recommendations. One important review of this committee is the debt to GDP ratio has to come down to 60% by 2023. In this, 40% is for the center and 20% is for the states together. So what the article talks about is getting this 20% from the states is the difficult task, and it has given certain reasons for the same and also suggested some measures to overcome that. To understand this article, let us take this example. Let us think this way. I took some 10,000 rupees as a loan from the bank, which is at 10% interest rate. Tomorrow, if I have to repay this 10% interest rate, then I shall have at least greater than 10% of the growth in my business. Then only I become profitable. If my growth is around 5% and the interest rate which I have to pay is 10% on my capital, then I am in negative zone. And growth is again depends on quality of my expenditure. Now, if I am spending more on cars and luxuries, probably I never get the proper profit. If I spend it reasonably towards a particular value, then I can get the better returns. Similarly, the states have growth and interest. If they are compared to each other, the interest which they are paying is much higher compared to the growth they are achieving. So that's why if you take in central government R minus G, it means the interest rates which they are paying are less compared to the growth. That's why this is called as the negative rate growth differential, negative interest rate growth differential. That is interest rate minus growth. As interest is less, growth is high. This becomes negative. When it is negative, obviously it's a positive sign. In the long run, debt to GDP ratio is bound to come down as you are earning more compared to your interest rate payments and you are going to clear off your debt. That is what is the first thing. This is what has been called as interest rate growth differential. And the second is the quality of expenditure. If you take the states recently, the quality of expenditure is coming down. Especially the subsidies are increasing, farm loan waivers, all these things which we are seeing. And second major problem is this with regard to the growth. The quality of expenditure is not only decreasing, but also most of the cases off-budget liabilities are being shown. What are these off-budget liabilities? Let's take, I have 10,000 debt and I show 8,000 rupees in the budget and 2,000 rupees as not connected with the budget. So when I calculate the fiscal deficit, only 8,000 rupees is being shown as a liability and this 2,000 rupees is not being included in the accounts. If you take about Uday scheme, whatever the finances the government is borrowing, these are the off-budget liabilities. So off-budget liabilities is trying to mask the debt of the state governments. So added to that, whatever the fiscal prudence shown by the states, it is due to many exogenous factors. The 12th Finance Commission has reviewed or it has restructured the debt of the states. It has extended the time period during which they have to repay their debt and also subjected to various financial sector reforms, it has waived off certain debt. So because of this, the states are showing relatively a better performance. So by and large, the interest rate growth differential of the states is not very favorable. Quality of expenditure is deteriorating in the states. And whatever the fiscal prudence shown by the states is majorly due to exogenous factors rather than to the better fiscal governance. This is what we need to understand. Then what we have to do now? If you see Article 293 of the Constitution, the article clearly states that the center has to give permission to the states if they owe the center in debt. It means if state has to pay to the center, if state has to borrow any money from the market, then the center permission is necessary. So the market discipline has to be brought into the states. How the market discipline can be brought in? Let us bring in the states on a particular index based on the risk of investment involved in those states. So if the fiscal prudence is high, then the state can get the loan at better concessional terms from the market. So the interest rates at which the states are being paid for or the states are expected to pay for is dependent on the fiscal promise they hold for. So that's why under Article 293 we can allow for majorly market borrowings for the states, and the market will subject them to the discipline. So simply put it this way, if you see, if you are having a good credit rating, then you get the loans at a lower interest rate. If you have the worst credit rating, loans are bound to increase. Similarly, if the states have worst credit rating, they are going to get high cost loans. That's what is being stated. So if you are performing well, you will be rewarded. And accounting practices need to be transparent. This off-budget liabilities have to be done away with. And quality of expenditure need to be improved. Here if you see, there is a report by the RBI, that is quality of national, subnational public expenditure. It clearly shows the worsening tendencies of the expenditure. So that's why the emphasis shall be on quality of expenditure more towards the capital expenditure, that is infrastructure building, etc. If money is spent on the capital expenditure, it comes back as a revenue. If it has been spent on a revenue expenditure, obviously it is more of going in the form of salaries, etc. And then the fiscal discipline has to be ensured in financial transfers. What does that mean? You know that the net tax income will be shared between the center and the states. For this, there will be a formula applied which has been given by Financial Commission. One of the criteria on which the Financial Commission has to base its decision is on the fiscal discipline of the states. The 11th, 12th, 13th Finance Commission has given due weightage to the fiscal discipline of the states, but the 14th Finance Commission done away with it. So that's why we need to move towards this fiscal discipline. This is this particular thing. This is what is learning to run twice as fast article. So it is subjectively very intense article. I tried to be as brief as possible and try to understand these terms. And read the notes carefully so that you can understand this article well. We need to question ourselves. It is about the racism in India. Understand, Indians are very color conscious. They try to attribute and give attitudes to the color. So white and black, either it is money or anything. So this color consciousness is bringing in a kind of racial orientation in our behavior. Though our mind may not be racist, but our preference to the color has given an indirect notions to the world that we are racist. And the government is in a constant denial of the problem. If the country is branded as a racist, obviously it will have global repercussions. So India has to introspect and need to bring in change in behavioral patterns of the people based on color. That's what the article's emphasis is about. So the author takes the context of Harbhajan Singh's comment against this Australian, but understand, we don't need to have these particular incidents. Just try to understand the point below that. Next is, in 4 doses, it is about malaria vaccine. So there is a Muscurix. This is the malaria vaccine which is coming up into the trials. You all know that as of now, the vaccines which are existing, these are against the viral diseases. Now, for the first time, a parasite disease is getting a vaccine. So the trial is in the stage 3, where efficacy and safety is tested. There are major complications or major challenges to this vaccine. So the efficacy of the vaccine will increase only by the 4th dose. The spacing between the doses, especially between the 3rd and 4th dose, is very high. The people have little patience, and continuity of having a vaccine after the 4th dose is very much difficult. And the second thing is, the efficacy of the vaccine is also very low. So only 1/3 of the cases are being reported to be malaria-free after administration of the vaccine. So addressing the spacing issue and also the efficacy, these are the 2 challenges. And above all, remember one point. If vaccine is not a solution to everything, you need to continue with the other measures related to the malaria control. The Sri Lanka is a best example. It has become malaria-free. And it is purely due to the change in practices of life. So the mosquito net use made compulsory, and also the rice fields, etc., these are being defogged for mosquitoes. Because of these changes, Sri Lanka has become mosquito-free. And then what's cricket? This is about the revenue sharing model of the ICC. You know that previously there was 3 big revenue model in which major chunk has went to BCCI, Australia and England cricket boards. Now there will be equal sharing, relatively equal sharing across all the boards, and it spreads for the cricket across the world. It is essential for spread of the cricket and deepening of the game across the world. BCCI, by having hegemony over ICC, it tried to fill its coffers rather than investing in the spread of the game across the world. That is what is the criticism on the previous model. So the ICCI has moved away from this model. That's what is this article talks about. Now, are we nation of pseudo-secularists? Let us understand the word secularism. The word secularism has its origins in European history, where the state and church has to be separate from each other. So the spiritual function shall be with the church, and then the affairs of the administration shall be in the hands of the state. So this context, this secularism has come into existence. So the right argues that Hinduism as a religion is itself secular. It believes in polytheism. It also has different cultural practices and acceptance and tolerance intrinsic to it. So that's why the secularism, which is a Western concept, do not apply to India. And then Hinduism as a concept is region-based rather than a religion. And they argue that Hindutva is a way of life rather than being attributed to a religion. On the other hand, the left argument, the other side of the argument is this. The secularism and pseudo-secularism, these are the national constructs. If you talk about Indian national movement, India as an idea is an outcome of this national movement during independence or national movement in modern India. So the entire national movement is a secular national movement. And the pseudo-secularism is invented by the writers to discredit this particular secularism, which is part of the national movement. And finally, we can say, after the independence, the word secularism and pseudo-secularism has become very much important in the context of electoral politics. The electoral politics have deepened this particular argument. Next is India's population story. So this article states that India is about to achieve the replacement level of fertility. What does that mean? The TFR, total fertility rate, if it comes to 2.1, then the two-child norm will be implemented and every active couple will have only 2 children. But however, the population is bound to increase in spite of reaching to the replacement level of fertility. The reasons are this. The youth bulge is increasing in India. And the second is, most of these youth, these are going to be located in North India. It means the demographic dividend is going to come up in North rather than the South. So human resources has to flow to India from the North in the future. So investment of in the human resources is essential, but for both North and the South, for the prosperity of India. That is the article talks about. And then disabled. You know that 2017 the law has been passed, the Rights of the Persons with Physical Disabilities Act 2017. So the major challenges of the persons with disabilities is related to access. This access may be physical access or access to employment, education, etc. So this access is being made as a right as per the UN Convention for Physically Disabled People. So this law is being stated as a progressive step, as it also provides for special courts to deal with the issues of the physically disabled. This article emphasizes on the same. Now, let's go to the front page. The no barrier to naming of Lokpal Supreme Court. You know that the Lokpal Act 2013 is not yet been notified, stating the reason that there is no leader of opposition in the parliament as of now. The Supreme Court has clearly stated that there shall not be a barrier for creation and operationalization of the Lokpal. Now, let's go to this nation page. There is one important article, Judicial Performance Index is proposed. So, different courts at what level they are performing, what are the relative clearance rates to various cases, how much of the lag is existing. To understand this, a kind of Judicial Performance Index has been mooted by Niti Aayog. And the second, it also states that the number of cases to be cleared, there has to be streamlining of the laws related to the land. The land-related civil cases, they occupy more than 1/3 of the cases in our judiciary. And third is, many of the petty related issues, they can be transferred to the police and judiciary can concentrate on core functions to decrease the judicial delays. These are the 3 important points of this article. And then Vinod Khanna passes away. The next is Trump flips on NAFTA. So the North American Free Trade Agreement, it was very much criticized by Mr. Trump during electioneering. Finally, he takes a volte-face now and he states that the NAFTA will be renegotiated rather than US pulling out from it. And the next is UID PAN linking a bargain, Faustian bargain. Every citizen shall have right to bodily privacy by linking the unique identity to the PAN number, and the state is making the surveillance a rampant activity. So to what extent body privacy is being protected by the state? That is what is the argument which is going on in the court on this issue. And Bhutan out of vehicle pact. You know that BBIN, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, they are working towards a motor vehicle agreement. And Bhutan moved out of this pact stating that excessive motor movement in Bhutan, it can lead to pollution and environmental degradation. So it means South Asian Regional Connectivity Plan is not getting a proper response from the partners. That's how we can put it as. Let's revise the notes. FRBM Review Committee targets and challenges to achieve the same. Now it means the FRBM Review Committee, it has clearly given certain targets of GDP, debt to GDP ratio, and states taking that is a complex task. The major reason being fiscal indiscipline of the states. That's what this article talks about. And the next is, we need to question ourselves. It is about the racial slur that is existing in India. We need to be sensitive towards the color and sensitive to, complexion of the people. We shall not give an exhibition that there is a racial sense in our words. That's what is the essence of this article. In 4 doses, it is about the malaria vaccine which has to be given in 4 doses. The time gap between the 3rd and 4th dose is very huge. And the second is the efficacy of the vaccine is not expected to be great. But the positives about this are the most dangerous among the malarial parasites is falciparum parasite. And this is the reason for this cerebral malaria, and the vaccine is effective against the falciparum. And if you take 4+ lakhs of people dying of malaria every year, the 1/3 of the lives saved is also going to have a huge impact. We need to address these concerns through these trials. That's what is the article talks about. What's cricket? In this, it has been stated that ICC's work or else ICC revenue sharing pattern, it will help in spreading the cricket across the world. So that's what is the article talks about. And the next is carry home. So argument. With regard to the argument, remember certain points. In India, secularism, pseudo-secularism and communalism, these have to be more seen from the electoral context. That is one point which we need to remember. Second, minority communalism ultimately also gets accumulated with the majority communalism. And given the experience of modern polity, the Nehru thought that the pre-modern identities such as caste, religion, region gets diluted over a period of time. But however, in India, this got strengthened. That's what is the second argument. So the pseudo-secularism is a right-wing construct in India. And the second argument is the secularism itself is an alien concept to India. Finally, we can say it as the concept of secularism, communalism, these are getting deepened due to electoral politics. These are the 3 arguments. And then we saw the news of the day. And one more article is India's population story. As for NFHS 4, Indian population is bound to increase, though we are reaching the replacement rate of the fertility, the major reason being the youth bulge in India. Added to that, youth bulge is going to come up in the north. It means in the future, the prosperity is going to happen in the north compared to the south because of the demographic dividend over there. It may reduce the inequalities between north and south. So these are the articles for today. Thank you very much and all the best.